what we are going to talk about today is we're going to talk about circles to start off with. And there are some things that we are going to kind of need to know before we get on with thinking about circles and area and all this kind of stuff. So what we are going to need to know first is we're going to need to know some parts of the circle. Now, hopefully, you know some of them already. But the ones that we absolutely need to know are the ones where we have this line, okay, which you may be thinking to yourself, I know what that's called. Good. That's our radius, okay, and that is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle, so the circumference. And the other one we will need to know, the green line, again, you may be thinking to yourself, I know what that is as well, things are going well. That's our diameter, okay, and that's the distance from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle that passes through the center, okay? So for all of the circle stuff that we're going to be doing, we will absolutely need to know those two words and what they referred to in terms of our circle. So the radius goes from the center to the edge. The diameter goes from edge to edge through the middle. Okay? And the reason why we need to know these things is because they are really closely linked with our area, and eventually we'll look at perimeter as well. And they are linked to the area and perimeter through a really, really useful, interesting number. Okay? And this is something that you can actually try out at home to find out what that number is. Okay, I'm just going to remove my paper for a moment. All you need to do is to have something circular. So I've gone for my used tea mug because it was what I had to hand. Let's make that a little bit bigger to look at. There we go. So I got my mug. Okay. All you'd need to find out this little number, and you can have a go at this yourself, is you need some string. Okay, you need a decent length of string and a ruler or something to measure it with. Okay, so what you can do is you can take your string and wrap it around the edge of your round object. Okay, and the string is slightly stretchy. You just want to get it so you find out how far it is all the way around. Okay, which is about that distance for me. Okay, so from one end of my finger to the other one. Okay, now all I'm going to do is to take that distance that I've got measured in string and put it next to a ruler. Okay, which I have got just here. Okay, and there we go. Now, if I measure my bit of string, I will know what the distance going all the way around that object is. Okay, so for me, this bit of string is approximately 33.3 centimeters, roughly, okay? Give or take a little bit. So if we know what I get my mug back. If we know what the distance going around the circular object is, and we know the distance going across the circular object through the middle, i.e. our diameter, we can find out this magical number. Okay? So my distance going all the way around the circle was about 33 and a bit centimeters. My diameter going straight across the middle of our circle is roughly 10.5. Okay, roughly 10.5. So if I do on my calculator, what was it, 33.3-ish divided by 10.5-ish. Okay, what I should get really, really close to is a number beginning like 3.1, hopefully 4. Okay, now I got 3.17, so that's because my measurements weren't exact. There was a little bit of inaccuracy there. But what we should get really close to is a particular number. Okay, and that number is pi. Okay, and you see, don't know if you can see that on there. There we go. Our number pi being 3.14159, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and this might be slightly better to see if I show you this. Okay, and we go back to this screen. There we go. So if we unravel a circle, imagine that this is the string that went around our circular object. The diameter, the distance going across our circle, will fit in exactly pi amount of times, so 3.14 times. Okay, so the diameter is 2 squares along. The distance going around our circle is 3.14 lots of our diameter. Okay, you can't see that. There we go. That's better. So here we go. Let me see if we unravel that circle. We can see that it goes through pi times exactly. Okay, diameter is 2 boxes across. The diameter goes in once, twice, 3 times, and then pi times. Okay? So what this means is that pi tells us how many times the diameter fits into the distance going around our circle, the circumference. Okay? But pi also gets used for lots of things to do with circles. Okay? Because of this link. Okay? And we're going to look at, for the rest of this video, how we can find the area of a circle by using pi. Okay, so I'm going to lose that, I'm going to gain that, and we're going to carry on from where we are now. Okay, so as well as knowing what the radius and the diameter are, we also need to know that pi is a number that tells us a link between the circumference and the diameter. Okay, and in terms of a number on our calculator, it's about 3.14. Okay, if we say 3.14, that will be accurate enough for us. Okay, we do also have a pi button on our calculators. Okay, it might be in a different place if you've got a different calculator, but you can generally find it by pressing Shift and a button on your calculator. Okay, and we're going to be using that in our calculations. Okay, so second crucial piece of information for us today, and if you are writing stuff down, which I really encourage you to do at this point, is how we actually find the area of our circle. Okay, so to find the area of a circle, what we need is to know the radius. Okay, and we often see it written as area is equal to pi times r squared, or pi times radius squared. So if we know the radius of our circle, we can find the area. Okay, and if you think about our mug from earlier, the radius is the distance from the center of our circle to the edge, just like we've got in that diagram there. Okay. If we knew the diameter all the way across, well, we can just half of it. Okay? So how do we find the area for this? Well, we use our formula and we do a calculation. Okay? So let's have a look at two examples. Okay, so that we can see it in action, and then we'll have a go at it ourselves. So example number 1. Come on, pen. There we go. Example number 1. What is the area of a circle whose radius is 4 centimeters? Okay, so our radius is 4 centimeters. Come on. There we go. Our radius is 4 centimeters. Our area is going to be equal to pi times radius squared. So pi times 4 squared. Now, there are two ways that we can give our answer. There's a way that involves our calculator, and there's a way that doesn't involve our calculator. The way that doesn't involve our calculator is that we just work out what 4 squared is. Okay, so 4 squared, 4 times 4, is 16. So we can just say that our area is 16 pi centimeters squared. Just like we would say, like timesing by a letter in algebra, we would say that we've got 16x. For this, because pi is a number that can go on forever, we can just say that the area is going to be 16 times pi. Just like we would say it's 16 times x or something like that. Okay, so that's one way, a nice, really lazy way that we can write our answer. Another way that we can write our answer is by using our calculator. So reaching for our calculator and doing pi times 4 squared. It helps if you've got your calculator on. Pi times 4 squared. Now, calculator might just go, that's 16 pi, like my calculator has done here. Now, if we want to get a decimal answer to that, we'll have to press our S to D button or a change button on your calculator, and it will give you a decimal. So in this case, it says 50.265, so let's say 50.27 to 2 decimal places. Okay, and I've just written 2dp in brackets there to say that I've rounded my answer here to 2 decimal places. Okay, remember that we're finding an area, so our units are measured in centimeters squared, or whatever our unit is squared. Okay, so that's our first example. Our second example says that what is the area of a circle whose diameter is 4 centimeters? Okay, so in this case, our diameter is 4 centimeters. Now, to find the area, we don't want to know what the diameter is, we want to know what our radius is. Okay, we want to know what that radius is. Remember that our radius just goes from the center to the edge. A diameter would go all the way across. Okay, it would go all the way across our circle like that. So our radius is going to be our diameter divided by 2. 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Okay. So our radius is 2 centimeters. That is the bit of information that we need. So our area, which is pi times radius squared, is going to be pi times 2 squared. Now we can write our answer in the lazy way or using our calculator. We're going to do both. So the lazy way of doing it would be to say, well, 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. So that would be equal to 4 pi centimeters squared. Or if we were using our calculator, we could type out pi times 2 squared, hit equals, and if it comes out as saying 4 pi, we press our change button or our S to D button on our calculator, which is just there, to get our decimal answer, which in this case is 12.56637.061. I'm going to round that up to be 12.57 to 2 decimal places. Okay? So that formula here, that is one that we absolutely have to know. Okay, it's one of the ones that we can try to test ourselves on time and time again. We need to know that formula. Okay. So the thing now is to make sure that we've got plenty of practice. Okay, and we do have to make sure that we look to use the right bit of information. We need to check whether we've been given a radius or whether we've been given a diameter. And we need to make sure that if we have the diameter, we half it to get our radius. Okay? So, what I've got on here is 10 different circles. They're all the same size on there, but we've told that actually they have different measurements on the inside. Okay. Whenever you have a diagram, unless it says that it is drawn to scale, we have to assume that it isn't drawn to scale. Okay. So we have to assume that whatever measurement that we've got in here, that is actually the measurement of the circle. Okay. So what I would like you to have a go at now, just for maybe 5 minutes or so, is to try and work out some of the areas of these circles, okay? If you've got a calculator, that will help you with ones which are decimals. If you don't have a calculator to hand, maybe try some of the ones which are whole numbers, because they're a little bit easier to square. And if you manage to do a few of these and you think, yep, I got this is really easy, see if you can have a go at the extension one, because the extension one is that little bit more challenging. Okay. And yeah, if you are signed in and you can use the live chat to ask questions, feel free to do so, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. If not, do your best with what you can from these, and then we're going to go through some of the answers in about 5 minutes or so. Okay. And yeah, this is your chance now to practice some things. Give it a go. See how you do. All right? Okay, there's 2 minutes, well, less than 2 minutes left now. So, hopefully you managed to get to grips with some of these questions. If you've got your calculator ready and you're able to do some of the decimal ones as well, that's even better. What we will do is take one of the decimal ones and think of it written as a fraction and see if that can be easier for us to do without a calculator as well. And what we'll also do is take a look at one of the extension ones and see why those ones are that little bit more difficult. Okay? Okay, in 3, 2, 1, 0, stop. Okay, if you didn't manage to finish that that little exercise and you want to go ahead and do that, feel free to stop at any point and continue practicing some of the questions, and then you can hear these little explanations afterwards. So we're going to look at the very first one, the one that I underlined first. Radius is 8 centimeters. We know the area is pi times radius squared. In this case, that's going to be pi times 8 squared. 8 times 8, knowing your times tables makes things nice and quick, 64. So if we're writing this in the lazy way, that's going to be 64 pi centimeters squared. And if we want to write it using a decimal, we're going to have pi times 8 squared. We'd get that decimal number that is just there. Okay? Now, for one of the ones which is one of the decimals, so let's take the third one along, the one that says a radius of 0.5 centimeters. Now, with this one, we still use the same formula. So area is still going to be pi times radius squared. And we can still write pi times 0.5 squared. Now on our calculator, we can literally just type in pi times 0.5 squared, and we'll get our answer. Okay, it says 1/4 pi. And we can ask for a decimal, if we prefer, and it gives us one of 0.785. Okay? But what if we didn't have our calculator and we were looking to do 0.5 squared? Well, we've got two options. We can either set up a little multiplication grid for doing 0.5 times 0.5, okay, and do the multiplication grid like that, or we could think of it in terms of a fraction, because actually that would make it easier. Now, 0.5 as a fraction is a half. And when you square a fraction, you multiply the top by itself, the numerator by itself, multiply the bottom by itself, or the denominator by itself. So 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. 1/4 pi, which is the answer that we got before. There we go. We get the same answer. Okay, which as a decimal, we said, what, 0.785. to 3 decimal places. Okay? Now, if you don't want to see the answers to these 10 because you're still working on them or whatever, I would suggest that this is the point where you pause the video and you can resume it again later on. If you want to see some of the answers so that you can check whether what you've done is right or not, this is the time. So you've got 3 seconds to pause it. All right, your answers are coming up now. Boom. Now, with the rounded answers, the decimal ones underneath, if you've gone for 1 decimal place or 3 decimal places, you want to make sure that everything checks in. So if you've gone for 1 decimal place, our answer here should round to the answer that you've got. If you've gotten 3 decimal places, then the answer that you've got should round to make this. Okay? So those 10, you can double check. Now, last thing for this video, okay, is the extension ones. Okay, now this is quite a step up in terms of how we use our formula, but it's a really interesting way of kind of stepping up your level of maths that little bit. Okay, we know that the area of a circle is equal to pi times radius squared. That's been our main feature for today. So what we now want to think of, well, what our extension questions are asking us, is if we know what the area is, can we work out what the radius is? So this is kind of like us looking to solve equations to try and figure out what our radius is. Now, we have to think carefully about what's going on here. When I've worked out my area, I've always done pi times our radius squared. So this thing here is saying pi times our radius squared. So to find out what our radius squared is equal to, I would have to do the opposite of multiplying by pi, which is to divide by pi. So that would tell me that 31.4 divided by pi is equal to our radius squared. Now, when you think about solving equations, we need to also we're always thinking about doing the opposite of things. So now I need to think about what is the opposite to squaring something. Now, squaring something means multiplying it by itself, but we can't do the opposite of that, which is to divide dividing it by itself. That will just give us 1. Okay, that's not what we do here. What we do is we take a square root. Okay, a square root is the opposite of squaring something. So to find my radius, I want to do the square root of 31.4 divided by pi. Square root 31.4 divided by pi. Okay, you can just about see that there. It equals, what do I get? I get 3.161. Okay, and the answer that I get on the PowerPoint screen there is 3.16. Okay, which is what that answer rounds to. Okay. Now, those kind of extension bits there are a step up. They are a step up. Okay. What I would want to make sure from someone who's watched this video is that they can use either the radius or the diameter as a whole number or a decimal or a fraction to be able to find the area of a circle. Okay? That's what I would want. If you can do this as well, that is fantastic. That is absolutely amazing. But if you can do this stuff and answer those like 10 questions at the main part of this slide, then you've got exactly what I want from this video. Okay? Remember that if you are one of my students, or if you're at the same school that I go to, you feel free to email me questions about anything you see on here, and I'll be more than happy to email you back and provide you with a little bit of extra help or whatever. And as always, you know, make sure that you spend a little bit of time to practice some of the things you've seen here out. Make sure you try out some of the Hegarty quizzes if you're following these videos. It'll help you practice a little bit more, and also hopefully give you a little bit of feedback as well. But most importantly, when you've given it a go, give yourself a little break as well. Give yourself a little bit of time just to have that little bit of a relax. Get yourself a little drink. Maybe step outside for a little bit. Because as much as you need to do a little bit of maths, you also need to look after yourself. So, I'm going to do that right now. And I will see you all next time. Cheerio.